The guy moved from behind, but I still greeted him. And in that single, strange moment I realized I could lie to myself no longer. That line cut through the hum of the cafe like a match. Hi, I'm Claire, and this is a true story about loyalty, longing, and the small, quiet choices that change everything. It was the kind of Thursday that felt ordinary in every possible way. I was meeting my friend Jenna for coffee after work. The city had that soft gold light you only get in October. I'd been married to Mark for 6 years. We had the house, the routines, the smiling photos on the mantle. The kind of life that reads like an answer on paper. But lately, there had been a tiredness between us, the kind that lives in the silences. Quick replies to texts, evenings spent in separate corners of the couch, and the avoidance of anything that might make us look too closely at one another. At the cafe door, a man moved from behind the pastry case to hand me my latte. He smelled faintly of cedar and rain, and his name tag read Ethan. He smiled, and I, politely and without thinking, greeted him back. That tiny exchange should have been meaningless, but beneath it was a current of something dangerous and electric. A reminder that I could still be seen, that someone new could notice the small details I'd thought only Mark knew. Ethan and I started off as strangers who shared a shift in a place that served other people's routines every morning. He was a barista who talked like he was reading good poetry. Slow, careful, never revealing too much. We began with small talk. The best time to get a table at a nearby brunch spot, the awful weather that week, a book he recommended. Then one night, after I'd missed my train and the cafe was closing, he offered to wait with me while I called a rideshare. The air between us shifted. He didn't touch me in a way that startled. He simply offered the kind of attention I'd forgotten existed. Undivided, curious, and unhurried. I didn't set out to fall into anything. I told myself I was only human, that friendships are allowed. But the trouble with human hearts is that they keep score in silence. A message from Mark saying he'll be late because of work meant nothing. A message from Ethan saying he'd noticed a new scarf I was wearing made my pulse quicken. I told myself I was craving warmth, not betrayal. I said I was lonely, not unfaithful. Words slid past the truth like rain on a window. Our conversations became longer. He learned the names of my favorite songs, the exact way I took my coffee, the childhood nickname Jenna used. We met more often, purely by chance always, and found excuses to talk about important-sounding things. Our favorite cities, why we left certain friendships behind, what we'd wanted to be when we were 20. He listened like someone who collected every word like a private treasure. There was a tenderness to it that made me feel younger, braver. It made Mark, across the silence in our house, feel further away. Romantic tension isn't always fireworks. More often it's a slow tidal pull. It crept into my days in the shape of missed calls I didn't return, of rehearsed conversations with Mark that never happened. I began to notice Mark in a different light, tired, distracted, or perhaps simply content in a way that left no room for what I needed. I started to wonder whether I had misplaced my own reflection somewhere between laundry piles and mortgage payments. One Saturday, Jenna invited me to a small dinner party. Ethan was there, not by coincidence, but with an invitation Jenna assured me he accepted because she needed another friend. The evening was a blur of wine and laughter, and for a while I could pretend we were two ordinary people enjoying a night out. Later, when everyone else stepped away to the garden, Ethan and I lingered in the warm kitchen light. He told me about an art exhibit he'd just been to. The way he described color made me see my life as if it were a canvas I'd been standing too close to. I told him about a childhood fear of deep water. We didn't plan anything. We simply fell into an intimacy that felt inevitable. The guilt arrived like a dull ache the next morning. I had an argument with Mark that wasn't about Ethan at all. It was about the small acts of neglect that had accumulated without our naming them. We both said things that were kinder than what we felt. After, I sat on the landing of our stairs and realized the house felt foreign. I remember thinking, if I could walk out that door right now, would I? The truth is messy. Infidelity rarely feels like a single dramatic decision. It's 1,000 tiny choices followed by one decisive one. For me, the decisive moment came on a rainy Thursday. Mark had left early for a meeting that ran late. Ethan texted asking if I wanted to meet for coffee while I waited. I knew saying yes would start a train I could not easily stop. I also knew saying no would keep me in a place that felt like a pause rather than a life. I chose to go. We met under the awning of the same cafe, rain ticking like a metronome on the roof. The city smelled of wet pavement and the faint citrus scent of a pastry case. We sat across from each other, and the conversation that followed was the kind that makes the world reduce itself to the immediate thing. Two people leaning toward warmth. One stolen touch led to another, and suddenly the rain wasn't the only thing softening. We kissed, and it felt like stepping off a cliff into a sky I hadn't known was there. Afterward, the euphoria was raw and sweet. Then the guilt set in like a cold. I walked home with my umbrella collapsed against my shoulder and rehearsed 1,000 excuses I could offer Mark. We talked that night, honest and trembling, and the truth, when it finally landed between us, was both savage and liberating. I told him what I'd done. He listened. There were no cinematic scenes of yelling or melodramatic slamming doors. Just two exhausted people trying to name what they had become. We didn't immediately decide anything. We were wrecked and, oddly, a little relieved. The secret had weight, and now it was shared. There were long conversations, counseling sessions, awkward mornings where we pretended to be okay because we were too tired to do anything else. Mark and I tested the edges of forgiveness. We learned that forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's a decision to keep trying. For Ethan and me, the affair became a mirror. It showed us what we were missing and who we were when we were honest. He moved away a few months later to pursue a job in Portland. We said goodbye in the kindest way we could. There was no dramatic chase, no movie-style reconciliation. Just a phone call and a promise to stay kind. This story isn't an apology or a confession meant to absolve. It's an honest telling of a truth I'm still living with. That loving someone doesn't mean always staying. That attraction is not always a betrayal of character, but when acted upon it carries consequences we must own. Mark and I didn't have a perfect ending. We decided to try again slowly, like rebuilding a house with a new foundation and fragile trust. We made changes, small, stubborn changes, like sleeping in the same room, having weekly check-ins, and sometimes choosing presence over convenience. That if there's one thing I hope you take from this, it's that people are complicated. We can love someone deeply and still hurt them. We can be faithful in our intentions and fail in our actions. The choice to greet a stranger with a smile isn't immoral. It's human. What matters is what we do next, how we name our mistakes, how we face them, and whether we learn to be braver with the truth. And as for that first line, the man who moved from behind the pastry case, he didn't ruin my life, nor did he fix it. He simply reminded me that I was alive and that life is made up of choices, each one adding up to who we become.